Deep in the heart of an ancient forest, where the mist clings to the bark like a velvet shroud, there lived a tree unlike any other. While the pines and the firs grew straight and tall, reaching for the sky with an arrow-like precision, this oak was a chaotic masterpiece of knots, twists, and gnarled limbs. One morning, a master carpenter and his young apprentice wandered into the grove. The apprentice looked at the straight trees and saw floorboards, sturdy pillars, and elegant furniture. But when he looked at the gnarled oak, he scoffed. He called it a worthless tree, claiming its wood was too twisted for planks and its branches too crooked for any tool. The old carpenter smiled, resting his hand on the rough, scarred bark. He told the boy that because this tree was useless to the world of men, it was never cut down. Because it refused to be timber, it grew to be a giant, casting a shadow wide enough to shelter 1,000 weary travelers. Its inaccessibility to the carpenter's axe was the very secret of its eternal life. We find ourselves today in a forest of a different kind, one made of glass, steel, and fiber-optic cables. We are the straight trees. We have been taught that to be useful is the highest virtue, and so we have made ourselves infinitely available. We are planks for others to walk on, pillars for others to lean against, and fuel for a fire that is not our own. But as we sit here together, in the quiet of this moment, I want to ask you a question that might feel like a cool breeze on a fevered brow. What if your greatest strength lies not in how much you can give to the world, but in how much of yourself you choose to keep hidden? Before we descend further into the quiet depths of this wisdom, I would ask you to join our circle. If these words find resonance in your soul, consider subscribing and leaving a like. It is a small gesture that helps this sanctuary reach others who are wandering in the dark. I often wonder where you are listening from, whether you are in a bustling city or a quiet corner of the earth. Please, tell me in the comments. It warms my heart to know how far these seeds of thought are traveling. For those who feel a calling to support this labor of love more deeply, there is a small heart with a dollar sign below the video, a thanks button. Any contribution, however small, acts as water for this garden, allowing me to share these reflections with you every single day. And for those among us who feel that certain truths require more than a fleeting moment, I have gathered some of these quiet reflections into a guide I call Master the Right Moment. It is a condensed companion, pages rich with the art of timing, the sacred knowledge of when to move and when to remain as still as a mountain. You can find the path to it in the link within the comments. It is not a loud proclamation, but a whisper for those ready to listen. Let us return to the noise of our age. We live in a voracious vortex of connectivity. Our pockets vibrate with the demands of strangers. Our eyes are tethered to the blue glow of a digital leash, and we feel a haunting guilt if we do not respond instantly. We have become a commodity. We have lost the mystery of our own existence because we are always on, always present, always accessible. In this frantic rush to be seen, we have forgotten the power of being unreachable. Mastering the art of being inaccessible is not an act of cruelty. It is an act of holy preservation. It is about reclaiming the uncarved block of our soul. Our journey begins with the principle of the uncarved block, or what the old masters called Pu. Imagine, if you will, a piece of wood just pulled from the earth. It is raw, rugged, and full of infinite possibilities. It is not yet a table, it is not yet a chair, and because it is nothing in particular, it can be anything at all. This is our original state. But from the moment we enter this modern world, 1,000 chisels begin to hack away at us. Our parents, our teachers, our bosses, and now the invisible audience of the digital realm, they all have a design for us. They want to carve us into something useful. We feel this chisel every time we feel the need to perform our lives rather than live them. When you see a beautiful sunset, and your first instinct is not to breathe it in, but to capture it, filter it, and offer it up for the approval of others, you are allowing the world to carve your experience into a product. You are turning your soul into content. As Lao Tzu reminds us in the Tao Te Ching, when the block is carved, it becomes a tool. But the sage, the one who seeks peace, strives to remain as the uncarved block. Think of the psychological exhaustion we carry. It comes from the shavings of our identity being scattered on the floor of the world's workshop. We are tired because we are trying to be the perfect employee during the day, the engaged citizen in the evening, and the vibrant personality at night. We have allowed our boundaries to become so porous that there is no raw wood left. To be inaccessible is to pull the block away from the chisel. It is the radical act of keeping your truest thoughts, your deepest joys, and your most fragile sorrows for yourself. In our daily lives, this looks like the secret joy. Do you have a hobby that no one knows about? Do you have a garden you tend, a book you are writing, or a path you walk that you have never posted a picture of? If you don't, I invite you to start one. When you keep a part of your life entirely inaccessible to the public eye, that part of you begins to thicken and grow strong. It becomes a sanctuary where the world's opinions cannot reach. This is how we anchor ourselves in a storm. We must also learn to say no to the chisel of guilt. How many times have you said yes to a social gathering or a work task? Not because you had the energy, but because you were afraid of the silence that follows a no. Every time we yield out of a false sense of obligation, we are letting someone else decide the shape of our lives. The Taoist path suggests a return to simplicity, to a state where we are useless to the demands of the frantic. Try setting a boundary that is as firm as the bark of that ancient oak. Perhaps after the sun goes down, you are no longer a resource for your company or your social circle. You become the uncarved block again, resting in the darkness, reclaiming the potential of your own being. In the simplicity of being no one to the world, you finally become someone to yourself. This brings us to a second, perhaps deeper mystery: the utility of the empty vessel. Many of us fear being inaccessible because we fear being empty. We feel we must fill our calendars, our minds, and our homes with noise and activity to prove we exist. But consider the words of the old master, Lao Tzu, who observed that we shape clay into a pot. But it is the emptiness inside that makes it useful. We nail timber together to build a house, but it is the space where there is nothing that allows us to live within it. Our lives today are like a vessel filled to the very brim with stones. When a beautiful, life-giving rain begins to fall, the water simply spills over the sides. There is no room for the Tao to enter because we are too full of availability. We are booked and busy, which is often just a polite way of saying we are cluttered and deaf. To be inaccessible is to intentionally create a void within your life. It is to recognize that the most important part of a room is not the walls, but the space between them. We see the tragedy of the full vessel in our digital habits. We have lost our inner room because we have turned off the doors. When we keep our read receipts on, when we allow every notification to pierce our focus like a needle, we are living in a house with no walls. Anyone can walk in at any time and demand our attention. Our mind, which should be a temple of quiet reflection, becomes a crowded marketplace. As the ancient text of the Wen Tzu suggests, the mind is a delicate flame. If the doors are always open, The wind of the world will surely blow it out. Reclaiming your inaccessibility means rebuilding those walls. It means reclaiming the right to read a message and not respond until you have sat with it in your own empty space. It means understanding that your chi, your vital life force, is a finite resource. Every interaction, every email, every digital ping is a tiny leak in your container. If you have 100 leaks, you will eventually find yourself empty, not with the fertile emptiness of the vessel, but with the hollow exhaustion of a dried-up well. Consider the silence between the notes in a piece of music. If the pianist never lifted their fingers from the keys, there would be no melody, only a deafening roar. Your life needs those silences. In the modern world, this translates to the practice of deep absence. This is not just deep work, but deep being. It is the hour where the phone is in another room, where the computer is dark, and where you are inaccessible to everyone but the present moment. In that fertile silence, the music of your own intellect and spirit begins to form. When people ask why you didn't answer, or why you weren't present at the digital table, you do not need to offer a long, draining excuse. You can simply be like the vessel. You are holding space. You are protecting your chi. By being inaccessible, you are not withdrawing from life. You are deepening it. You are ensuring that when you do speak, when you do offer yourself to the world, you are doing so from a place of abundance, not from the scrapings at the bottom of an empty bowl. You are becoming a person of substance, a deep well that others must travel to reach, rather than a shallow puddle that everyone steps on as they pass by. As we deepen our understanding of this sacred distance, we must look at how we move through the world of others. We often feel as though life is a constant battle of wills, a frenetic struggle to be heard, to be right, and to be relevant. We find ourselves caught in a vortex of social expectations that demands we have an opinion on everything and a reaction to everyone. But there is a more ancient way, a path that doesn't involve the exhausting friction of constant engagement. This is the path of Wu Wei, the art of action through non-action. It is the wisdom of the river that finds the sea not by destroying the mountains in its way, but by simply being inaccessible to the temptation of struggle. Consider how much of our vital energy is dissipated in the noise of the social economy. We are hooked by rage bait, pulled into digital arguments with strangers, and tethered to the perceived urgency of a flashing notification. We believe that by reacting, we are asserting our presence. In reality, every time we react to a stimulus we did not choose, we are losing our autonomy. We are becoming predictable, a cog in a machine that feeds on our impulsivity. To be inaccessible in this context is to reclaim the flow. It is to be like the deep water that remains still at its core, even as the surface ripples with the passing wind. When we choose not to react, we are not being passive. We are being profoundly powerful. We are keeping our chi anchored within, refusing to let the world dictate the rhythm of our hearts. Think of the modern social circle as a web of invisible threads. Each thread is a demand, a question, a subtle hook seeking to pull a piece of your time. We have been taught that to be kind is to be a yes to every request. But a yes that comes from a place of exhaustion is not a gift. It is a lie. The Taoist Master understands the art of the soft no. This is not a wall of stone, but a boundary of water. When someone attempts to pull you into their chaos or their drama, you do not need to fight them. You simply become ungraspable. You offer no hook for their anger, no fuel for their fire. You might say, with a gentle smile, that you lack the capacity for such things right now. You offer no long, draining explanation, for explanations are just another way the world tries to carve your uncarved block. You simply remain in your state of Ziran, your own naturalness. There is a profound efficiency in absence. In our frenetic age, we think that the person who is always there, always talking, and always available is the one with the most influence. But look closely at the mechanics of resonance. A bell that is struck constantly produces only a chaotic din. It is the bell that remains silent, waiting for the right moment to be struck, that sends its vibration through the valley. When you make yourself less available, your presence takes on a different quality. It matures. When you are rare, your words carry the weight of your fertile silence. In the office, in your family, or in your community, notice what happens when you stop being the first responder to every crisis. People are forced to find their own strength, and when you finally do choose to step in, your intervention is seen not as a habit, but as a blessing. You are trusting the natural timing of life, letting the seasons of your social engagement turn at their own pace, rather than forcing a perpetual summer that only leads to drought. This brings us to the dwelling place of the hidden sage, the realization that privacy is not just a preference, but a sanctuary for the soul's maturation. The world tells us that if a moment isn't shared, it didn't happen. We feel a strange pressure to expose our lives, to turn our homes into glass houses where every meal, every thought, and every sunset is put on display. But as the old masters knew, that which is exposed to the constant light of the sun eventually withers. A seed needs the dark, damp silence of the earth to break its shell and grow. Our spirits are no different. We need an inaccessible zone where the gaze of the world cannot penetrate, a place where we can undergo our own transfiguration without the distortion of external judgment. Lao Tzu spoke of the wise person who wears common clothes but carries jade within. In our era, we do the opposite. We wear digital jade, glittering profiles and curated successes, while our inner lives are dressed in rags of anxiety and emptiness. To be inaccessible is to hide your jade. It is to move through the world with an unassuming presence, not needing to flaunt your status, your intelligence, or your busy schedule. There is a magnificent freedom in being underestimated. When you do not feel the need to prove your worth to everyone you meet, you save an enormous amount of energy. You are no longer performing. You are simply being. You allow your jade, your true character, and your deepest insights to stay protected beneath the surface, where it can glow with its own internal light. Consider the mystery of the unseen. There are moments in life that are so sacred, so subtle, that describing them to another person feels like a betrayal. A conversation with a child, a moment of profound prayer, or the quiet realization of a long-held mistake. These are the hidden gardens of the soul. When we rush to photograph these moments or tweet about them, we dissipate their resonance. We turn a sacred internal experience into a mundane external commodity. To be inaccessible is to have the discipline to keep some things entirely for yourself. It is to cultivate a secret garden that no one else has a key to. This is not about being secretive or deceptive. It is about recognizing that your soul needs a fence around it to bloom. We must learn to appreciate the strength of the shadow. In nature, the most intense growth often happens in the shade under the canopy of larger trees. In our lives, our greatest transformations often happen when we are in the shadow of the world's attention. When you are working on a new project, when you are healing from a wound, or when you are simply trying to find your way again, stay in the shadow. Do not announce your plans. Do not seek early validation for a seed that hasn't even sprouted yet. Let your work grow in the fertile silence of inaccessibility. Then, when it is strong enough to withstand the wind, it will reveal itself naturally. In your own home, I invite you to create a physical sanctuary of the invisible. Let there be a room, or even just a chair, where the noise of the world is forbidden. When you sit there, you are not a consumer, you are not an employee, and you are not a public figure. You are simply a human being, anchored in the impermanence of the breath. In this space, you are completely inaccessible to the digital abyss. Here, the osmosis of the world's chaos stops, and the maturation of your own wisdom begins. You are no longer a leaf in the storm. You are the mountain hidden in the mist, untouchable, serene, and deeply, beautifully alone. As we navigate the currents of this world, we often encounter the hardness of others, their demands, their sharp expectations, their rigid ideas of who we ought to be. We feel as though we must become a rock ourselves to survive, hardening our hearts to withstand the pressure. But there is a different kind of strength, a more subtle and enduring power found in the way of water. Water is the most inaccessible substance to force. If you strike it with a hammer, the hammer simply passes through. If you try to grasp a handful of the river, it slips through your fingers, remaining entirely itself even as it yields. This is the yielding strength of the sage, a way of being that allows us to set boundaries without ever becoming hard. In our frenetic modern lives, we are constantly being hooked. Think of the subtle hooks of guilt that a family member might use to pull you into a drama that isn't yours. Think of the artificial urgency of a work email sent at 10 o'clock on a Sunday night, designed to make you feel as though the world will end if you do not respond. These are the stones thrown into the pond of your peace. Most of us have been conditioned to absorb these stones, letting them sink deep into our hearts until we are heavy with the burdens of others. But the Taoist Master, as Chuang Tzu suggests, strives to be like a mirror. A mirror reflects the image of the stone, but it does not keep it. It remains clear, bright, and untouched by what it observes. To be inaccessible is to practice this reflection, not absorption. It is to see the chaos of the world, to acknowledge the demands of the hooks, but to refuse to let them inside the sanctuary of your soul. This yielding is not a sign of weakness. It is the ultimate form of resilience. Consider the path of least resistance. It is far easier to simply be unavailable for the hooks than it is to spend your life explaining why you are busy. When we set boundaries with hardness, we invite conflict. We build a wall, and the world brings a battering ram. But when we are like water, we don't build a wall. We simply change our state. We become fluid. In your daily life, this means adopting a state of naturalness, or ziran. It means setting your phone to do not disturb, not as a dramatic statement of rebellion, but as a natural law of your existence, as natural as the tide going out or the sun dipping below the horizon. You do not need to defend your silence. The mountain does not apologize for its height, and the river does not explain why it flows away from the thirsty. They simply are what they are. By being inaccessible to the false urgency of our age, we are protecting the internal ecology of our spirit. We are refusing to let the noise of the world become our inner monologue. We begin to recognize that much of what we call duty is actually just the noise of other people's anxieties. When you stop absorbing that noise, you find that you have a tremendous amount of energy that was previously being dissipated in unnecessary friction. You find the strength to stay in the flow, moving around the obstacles of life rather than exhausting yourself trying to break them. You become a person who is deeply present when you choose to be, but who remains essentially unreachable by the trivial, the petty, and the frantic. You are the deep water that remains cool even in the heat of the summer. A source of quiet strength that others can sense but never fully control. This journey through the art of inaccessibility leads us, finally, back to where we began, to ourselves. We have spent so much of our lives looking outward, wondering if we are enough, if we are seen, and if we are useful. We have peered into the abyss of digital validation, hoping that a like or a share would tell us who we are. But the more we seek resonance in the hollow spaces of the world, the more we feel our own internal well running dry. The final and most vital lesson of the sage is the return to the root, the process of becoming a deep well that is self-sufficient and anchored in its own silence. There is an old proverb that reminds us, "The well does not go to the thirsty. It is the thirsty who must find the well." Think of the modern tragedy of being a shallow puddle. A puddle is accessible to everyone. Anyone can step in it. Any dog can drink from it, and the sun can easily dry it up. It has no depth, no mystery, and no longevity. But a deep well is different. Its waters are hidden, cool, and drawn from a source deep within the earth that the surface heat cannot reach. To be a well is to focus entirely on your own maturation. It is to fill your own cup so completely that you no longer need the world to tell you that you are valid. This is the state of Ziran, to be so naturally yourself that you become a landmark for others, not by trying to help them, but by simply being a source of depth in a shallow world. In our era of constant connectivity, we have developed a profound fear of solitude. We see it as loneliness, a void to be filled with the noise of podcasts, social media, or mindless chatter. But as Lao Tzu teaches in the 16th chapter of the Tao Te Ching, solitude is the return to the root. It is the only way to find your own voice beneath the layer of 1,000 other voices. I invite you to practice the solo date, or the silent walk, not as a tactic for productivity, but as a sacred ritual of reconnection. Leave the world behind. Be inaccessible to everyone you know for just an hour, and see who you are when no one is watching. In that fertile silence, the transfiguration begins. The noise of your anxieties begins to dissipate, and the resonance of your true soul begins to hum. You find that you are not a fragment of a society, but a whole universe in yourself. This is the wisdom of the mountain, specifically the spirit of the hermit poet Han Shan, who wrote of the cold mountain that is inaccessible to those who are not ready for the climb. We must make people earn our deep attention. In a world that treats attention as a cheap currency to be spent on every passing whim, your attention should be a treasure. High-quality relationships, those that truly nourish the soul, require a climb. By being less accessible to the superficial, you create the space for the profound. You transcend the need for the world's applause because you have found a more stable audience within. You anchor yourself in the impermanence of the world, knowing that while fashions, opinions, and technologies will pass like the morning mist, the deep well of your being remains. We return now to the shadow of the gnarled oak, the tree that was too useless to be cut down. Can you see it now? The loggers have long since passed, their straight planks of timber having rotted away in the floors of old houses. But the gnarled tree remains. It is larger now, its roots deeper, its presence more commanding. It did not survive by being the most useful. It survived by being the most itself. It was inaccessible to the world's greed, and so it became a monument to the world's beauty. As you close this window and return to the flow of your day, I want you to carry this feeling of relief with you. You are not a resource to be mined. You are not a tool to be used. You are a living, breathing mystery that deserves to be protected. Tonight, when the sun begins to dip below the horizon and the long shadows stretch across the earth, I invite you to perform one small act of inaccessibility. Turn off the light of the screen. Close the door to the demands of the world. Let the notifications pile up like leaves in the autumn wind. They do not require your heat to stay alive. Be like the gnarled tree. Be useless to the machine, and you will find you are finally useful to your own soul. Build a wall of silence around your inner fire, so that it may burn bright and steady. For in the end, the world does not need more people who are available. It needs people who are deep. It needs people who have returned from the silence with something real to give. Go now, and let the world wait for you. For once, let the most important person you meet today be the one you find in the quiet, inaccessible depths of your own heart. May you find the peace of the uncarved block, and may your path be as fluid as the hidden river.